We'll talk a little bit about the 21st century primarily as still life evolves. And what we have here is the paintings of Sangram Majumdar, who is a very different kind of painter now, but in his origins, he's fairly academically trained in perception. And what he's interested in doing is really tugging at how far the picture can be pushed to really reference the abstract whole. So the tangle becomes the sort of swipes of line that you might see in a Jackson Pollock flip mark of paint. Or the picture plane might break into very, very simplistic shapes like that of a Piet Mondrian in the lower right hand corner in its reflections. In addition to that, we have artists like Susan Jane Walp, who also makes very, very humble paintings, and I think she's really hearkening back to Paul Cézanne here in this sort of strangeness of shapes as they don't relate. That hard edge, things appear as though they're sort of going to slide off of a table. We don't have a kind of perspectival vision here that is meant to essentially make us believe in the space, whereas they very much become designs. These very, very humble paintings go for quite a deal of money, and she does very well in moving them. I once saw a show of hers where I think every single piece had sold, and they were all about 12 inches by 12 inches, very small paintings that really do provide a provisional taste of what you need. Antonio Lopez Garcia, I've shown him before. He's considered to be a living treasure in Spain, and his still lifes really do sort of embody the stark, very, very bald nature of the light in Spain, in northern Spain to be specific. And of course, they're very, they touch on, sort of Franco's reign as a fascist. And of course, Franco died in, I think, 1980. And so he very much lived with this sort of stark existence. And another that touches on the same thing of his bathroom setting. Another painter who's dealing with vision in this sort of extreme form is Ellen Altfest. She's fairly young, and she takes a long time to make these fairly small paintings of very, very busy surfaces. And so these surfaces play on the sort of objectivity of the painter's eye. It doesn't matter that that's a human. It matters that the attention is paid to the surface of the human, not the inner psyche or being of the human. The chair is rendered in the exact same way that the tan line is. And here we have a studio floor with some firewood. And like I said, these do take a long period of time. And so it really is a sort of commitment to really, really looking in a way that is valuable, in a way that does touch on how little time we have as you think about the year that it took to construct a picture like this. Victor Pesce makes very large-scale paintings of very, very simple things, and he's very much interested in color and form and shape. They become atmospheric when they touch on reflected light. Someone who's in the same sort of vein is Andy Pankhurst. He's also pulling from Ewan Uglo, thinking about planes as well, shapes, color, in a very sort of economical way. Another Andy Pankhurst. Erin Radicke has been out at Arkansas State, and she was an exhibiting artist and a visiting artist, and she creates paintings, quite a few paintings, although not all of them are, of surfaces as well. And they very much are considerations of light. Notice there is hardly any white in that upper left-hand corner painting. It is purple. And so what they become is these sort of visions of the sort of detritus of the everyday, the banal house that we all keep. And for her, sometimes this might include the undertaking of children, because much of her paintings do sort of encompass what it might be like to be a working mother, an artist mother. Catherine Kehoe is a painter as well, who sort of really deals with a sort of hard edge and planes in the same way that Andy Pankhurst or Ewan Uglow has. They really are very beautiful, also very small, executed with a lot of straight edge or flat brushes. Another Aaron Radeke that's out of order here. Tim Kennedy and his wife Eve Mansdorf are working at Indiana University, I think still, and they create really sort of epic paintings of the domestic theater. These are all very familiar spaces that we will see time and time again as artists really do sort of delve into the still life itself. Avigdor Arica was a British artist from recent times who painted all of his paintings in one sitting. So they're fairly thin, but they really are they feel like they're found, that they've just been left behind. Catherine Murphy is a painter who deals with the still life in such a way that they do become in many ways allegorical. The fridge having the magnets of the farm, what's in the fridge but the things from the farm, and then we have the cross lying on this sort of cleavage of a woman, and this dichotomous relationship between faith and the sort of sinful body. So they're very smart and they're very interesting as not only epic commitments to sight, but also funny engagements with ideas that deal with the object's intrinsic meaning. Another Catherine Murphy of her shirt laid across her bed. And she's, not a thin woman, but we have a sort of very blousy tent-like shirt that's been laid across a bed, much like we would see a sheet or a blanket. Now, we can't talk about still life in the 20th century and the 21st century without talking about Audrey Flack, who was a photorealist who made a lot of these paintings in the 70s of gigantic airbrushed vanitas paintings. And here she is in front of one of her images, and she would work projecting a slide against her canvas while she actually painted on it, as many photorealist artists did. The work of Neil Gall, which we talked about, which I haven't talked about in here, but he'll create these little sort of garbage sculptures at the kitchen table with his very small son, photograph them, and then paint them. And they become these sort of funny tongue-in-cheek images that are about time and labor and vision, but essentially about the sort of like materiality of what he's making, which is out of garbage, which ultimately painting is made out of mud. Nancy Switzer makes a lot of her paintings with just her palette knife. We'll be doing those, and she'll really create this effect by doing a couple of layers. And how she's able to work that is she takes the painting and she puts the paintings in a deep freeze at the end of the day. So when she pulls it out the next day, it's still fairly wet, and she can move it around like hard frosting. And they're very beautiful and they're very sensual, and they really do, I think, encompass all that is sort of reflective and all that is the surface of light. Josephine Halverson is also a young painter, and she does very humble paintings of found things. She too is another painter who only completes her paintings in one session. And if she doesn't complete her painting in one session, she will throw it out. So another Josephine Halverson. You see the edges there to sort of give you an idea about what the object looks like. And she very much does acknowledge the edges of the picture plane. So this drawer seems like it ends at the end of the canvas. Some early work of mine, I used to be a still life artist. These I did in my mom's basement with clamp lights and objects from around the house. Sort of give you an idea that I do and have a sort of big venerance for the still life as a genre. And that brings us to a painting a day, which is what we're going to be doing. Painting a day was a about 15 years ago, a sort of popular phenomenon that was happening on eBay, in which artists would complete one painting a day, and as soon as they would complete it, they would photograph it while it was wet, and they would put it right up on eBay, and initially would sell most of them. If they were any good, they would sell each of them. And what that did is it cut out the middleman, in that the artist was the one who took the sale. So a gallery, who now at this point take 50 to 60% of a commission, which is why often art is very expensive, that was no longer part of the equation. And so an artist was able to make a living wage, a very good living wage, on selling these paintings that they made daily. And some of them, of course, would make more paintings than just one, but this was showcased in a New York Times article in which the artist talked about making about $50,000 or $55,000 a year doing this. And so it became a phenomenon. So if you go on eBay and you search painting a day, you'll see a lot of really terrible painting, but it really does sort of democratize the notion of what painting can be. I have a grisaille here, I'm not sure why. A couple of grisailles. So the painting of a day phenomenon was important because it really did touch on the future of what artists would become. Many artists make a good living off of Instagram and social media now, and they sell paintings direct. They pack it up, they ship it, and the image goes directly to a collector. And I think it's a really beautiful endeavor in that what this does is it allows for a positive experience, but also a very affordable experience for new and blossoming collectors, because art should be in every home, and it shouldn't matter how much money you make a year in order to surround yourself with beautiful objects that touch on the connected experience we have as human beings. So I'm showing more paintings a day, some more abstract than others, and not necessarily a painting a day here, but. And so we're ending on painting that becomes heavy with abstraction. And abstraction can become the sort of end-all of the process. And if we become committed to the process, we can find a voice. And so as boring as some people think still life is, still life allows us an opportunity to take great risks, to honor the practice of slowing down, of vision, of a relationship with the subject, in a way that strips it away from the inherent psychology that sometimes might complicate an image. And what that allows us to do is to find a way to move the paint around in a way that really does honor the practice of painting and the tradition of which it comes from.